ignoring this rock and roll stuff anymore. Every hotel and club in the country's wiring for information.
Hello, Groove Dogs. Welcome to the Runaway Radio Rewind, a program that looks and listens back to the heyday of one of America's truly great radio stations, the legendary and late KLOL. It's the Runaway Radio Rewind. And now, here's your host, Steve Robinson.
Check one, mic check. Hey, it's the Runaway Radio Rewind. Thanks for joining us as we take a look back on Rock 101 KLOL here in Houston. Today we hear from media guru Mike McGuff. He's got some insight on KLOL to share with you. And we also have a classic Uncle Waldo as well. So buckle up. Here we go. It's the Runaway Radio Rewind.
So in all of the research that you did and the interviews and the conversations and the emotion that came out in talking with the many people that you reached out to for input on the KLOL documentary, what are a couple of, or one of the stories that you think represent one of the time periods, one of the great episodes in the KLOL history? Was it during the Rice Hotel days, or was it during the Stevens and Pruitt days? Can you have one story that just topped them all?
I don't know if I can have one story to top it all. I would have to think about that for a while, because that's the problem, is there are too many stories about KLOL. It's overwhelming. I mean, I had a 4-hour documentary on my first cut because there were so many stories I wanted to include that I was like, this is great, but it's not as good as this, so it has to go, unfortunately. And especially I want to look for stuff that has a visual representation of it so you can kind of see it. I mean, I think the one thing that really stands out are Pat Fant, the general manager, and Doug Harris, the promotions director, came up with some truly interesting concepts as far as promotional items. I mean, they had a billboard when they wanted to give away a Corvette. There is a fake Corvette smashing through the billboard, so you're driving by on your way to work to 59 and there's a KLOL billboard with a car smashing through it, and you're like, wow, I'm not expecting that. Another time you might be driving by and you see a billboard with a giant bra hanging from it because of a promotion in the Change Your Life sweepstakes, which you're going to find out more about that in the documentary as well. Stuff like that is it kind of it excites people who weren't even probably listening to the station, just because they saw these billboards, they saw these commercials. I mean, Stevens and Pruitt alone, just them, that could be an entire documentary, quite honestly, because those two had such a storied career, had been together for so long, were Hudson and Harrigan on KILT, Stevens and Pruitt in Dallas at the Eagle, and then came back for so long at KLOL for decades. And people woke up with them, and I am sure that fans of, not even fans of rock station, I'm sure that people who didn't even like rock listened to Stevens and Pruitt because you never knew what they were going to do. And listening back to tapes of them, they are so fast, you miss jokes because your mind cannot process at the speed they were working on. I have listened to the same tape several times, and I get new stuff out of it almost every time. It's crazy how much was going on. You just don't have stuff like that anymore.
Do you have any comments or stories, or what was your take from the people you spoke with about the Stevens and Pruitt and Moby time period? When Stevens and Pruitt were in mornings, Moby was in the afternoon. I think that was also during the time period where KLOL won Rock Station of the Year from Billboard.
Yes.
And what was that dynamic about? What did you pick up? The Moby versus Stevens and Pruitt versus Moby, all on the same station, but yet there was a known rivalry that was going on.
Well, the amazing thing, I think a lot of the documentary does focus on the 97 Rock KLOL war. I think that was really one of the last great radio wars in Houston radio. These stations hated each other and did everything they could to undermine the other one to be the top rock station. And KLOL was the well-known station. It was the heritage rock station. It had been around 10 years at the point that 97 Rock signs on the air, but 97 Rock had ABC Radio as owners, and ABC Radio would do anything to win. No money did not matter to ABC Radio. So if they moved into the market and see KLOL suffering a bit, they will do anything they can to destroy it. So you have kind of the scrappy hometown team, locally owned, against the major corporate station, really battling it out any way they could, messing with each other's promotions, sticking bumper stickers over each other's stuff, trying to literally invade each other's promotional appearances to take over. It's fascinating. And even when I interviewed people on both sides back in this century, you can still feel the hatred for one another in the interviews. Like the emotion and the competition never left either side, in my opinion. It's fascinating that the war still kind of rages underneath the surface to this day. What's weird about the whole Stevens and Pruitt Moby thing is here they did compete against each other for a brief time before 97 Rock went off the air, and then you have Moby disappear to Dallas and return on KLOL.
Let me ask you another question. Do you mind if I come home? Yeah? Let me ask you one more question. Do you mind if I make KLOL my home?
All right.
Yeah? I'm not going to need this anymore.
So here's like two morning shows who hated each other now on the same station, essentially competing with each other as if they were on separate radio stations, but they are on the same team. So they have to show up together and do the station rah stuff. But I think that probably great radio came out of the fact that Moby wanted to beat Stevens and Pruitt and vice versa. I have some excellent pictures of Moby getting a haircut and Stevens and Pruitt holding up like swords and axes to him, and it's a great visual joke of probably how they really felt that whole time. But yeah, I mean, you can't get better when you have competition and just pure passion and just, competition is the word to beat the other one. I am sure the radio in that worked because they sat there and trashed each other, on air and made fun of each other all the time. And you got to think back to how much money these people were all making at that time. I mean, astronomical prices for these talents being here at that time. And no one in broadcasting is probably doing as well now as they were back then. It is unbelievable to think of just what kind of the high stakes that were happening at this time.
Did you come across advertisers who were passionate about their relationship with KLOL? There were some key advertisers well known in the Houston market that were staples. They were a force. They were a consistent voice presence on KLOL during that time period. What did they think about the economic relationship and the benefit and the balance in their support of the station?
I didn't go too much in the documentary about the whole sales portion just because it's there. Like I said, it's 4 hours, but definitely in the time of working on this and even before, I had always heard that there were Houston advertisers who lived by KLOL. Mattress Mac, Jim McInville, the owner of Gallery Furniture, was always, I remember this, broadcasting on KLOL. In fact, I found that he was doing, he did commercials that were explicitly for KLOL, with KLOL talent. So he obviously was a fan, or if he didn't like the music, he didn't like the personalities, he certainly liked the results KLOL got him and used that to his advantage. Rocky McCullough, who I think he worked at various car dealerships, but he always was on there with Stevens and Pruitt. It's like Stevens and Pruitt brought in advertisers almost like they were part of the show, because they would come on. Of course, they did their advertising spot, but they would hang around and just kind of BS with Stevens and Pruitt and talk, and they became a part of the show. And you didn't even really think about them as advertisers anymore necessarily as a listener. They were there, but you knew who they were. And I know for a fact that I.W. Marks, still a jeweler in town on Bel Air, I've talked to them. They loved KLOL because they could actually tell when one of their commercials aired, because their phones would just start ringing off the hooks all of a sudden, and they would say, well, we must have had a commercial just to appear on KLOL. And, there's video on YouTube of Stevens and Pruitt doing I.W. Marks commercials. They're out in a remote somewhere, and here they are talking about I.W. Marks.
Out here in the audience, in the bleachers, fourth row, center field that we're talking to right now. Sir, could I have your name?
My name is Terry Cummings.
And Terry, is it true that all these diamonds...
Beautiful, Terry.
Beautiful diamond rings you got on. Where did you get those?
I.W. Marks, of course.
And that's located conveniently, I understand, at 3841 Bel Air Boulevard.
Excuse me.
Right near Stella Link.
Wait a minute. What's your name again?
Terry Cummings.
You know, Terry, you have a New York accent.
Quit goofing, all right?
Stop goofing. We're doing an
Steve and I.W. Marks and Irv and tell them that I sent you. Terry Cummings.
Well, don't say hello to Steve. He ain't there tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
They fired his ass. He's gone.
Okay.
So, Mr. Cummings, you really are sinking this spot.
Yeah.
Are you sure your name's not Dick?
Well, go over and say Diane and
Dick
Irv.
Cummings, I know that guy.
Diane and Irv, and tell them that Terry Cummings sent you.
Sent you?
You're really sticking it to us on this commercial, I'll tell you. Remember,
Are you sure you're not still working for that other station?
I think he is.
He thinks he's still one of our competition.
Yeah.
Remember, at 3841 Bel Air
Kevin,
Boulevard, you're going to find I.W. Marks where they're having that big gold and diamond sale.
Yeah, half-price sale going on right now. Kevin, by the way, we shut that station down, remember?
That's Terry.
We killed it.
That's
we killed
Terry.
it. It's dead.
And remember, I.W. Marks said, come visit us, and don't look for Kevin to be making a public appearance.
And I know from working on the documentary, Jim Pruitt would have these skull rings that he gave out to people. And I don't know if he was doing it at the time, but he certainly was doing that in the last years of his life. I know that he wore one, and when I would interview other KLOL people, they'd have the same ring. Well, I talked to I.W. Marks. They made that ring there, and they even still have the cast or whatever you call it that makes the skull. And they still have it in the back. So, yeah, it's funny that I.W. Marks is still very high on KLOL. And when I've walked in there, they'll talk to me about KLOL because I had talked to them that I was doing the documentary. So they always are very excited to talk about KLOL still to this day. Probably wish they had something like that still on the air to advertise on, honestly, because you're targeting men, and I am sure that, hey, it's time, Mother's Day, it's your wife's birthday, and those men would listen and say, hey, I'm a groove dog. I can go into I.W. Marks and get a discount for listening to KLOL.
Good stuff, as always, from Mike McGuff. Hey, it's Steve Robinson. Be sure you touch base with us via Facebook, facebook.com/Runaway Radio Rewind, or you can just hit up runawayradiorewind.com. Uncle Waldo time.
Good morning. This morning, we're going to learn a valuable lesson about Stevens and Pruitt with the Japanese water torture. First, we add water. And now you know, Stevens and Pruitt, very funny. Stevens and Pruitt, very funny. Stevens and Pruitt, very funny. And now you know the truth. Remember, be happy in your work, even though you are lazy and uneducated American slime. Good morning.
Okay, you ready on the curtain boner? There it goes. Thank you very much.
What a youngster.
Good. Very good.
Ah, jeepers, you fine arts lovers, wherever you are. Time to sit back and enjoy those legendary Stevens and Pruitt Not Ready for Drive Time Players, starring in Uncle Waldo, teenage River Oaks tycoon type person. This script was authored by Paul and Jackie Ernst. Don't forget to dial 390-KLOL with compliments for their efforts and for the player's performance. It's Act 1, Scene 1 of Uncle Waldo, teenage River Oaks tycoon type person. And what's this? He and his maid, Queen Aretha, are in bed for a moment of wild and passionate lovemaking. Let's hear the moans and groans now.
Oh, baby.
And after a little bit of overacting, Queen Aretha speaks.
Uncle Walter, I want to tell you something, baby. Whew. That's the best I've ever had from a white man. You think you can do that again?
Well, I am a River Oaks tycoon, you know. Yes, I can do it again.
You think so?
That's right, Queen Aretha.
All right, baby, let's do it again. Come on.
Wait.
That was good. I never had a white boy like him.
Uno momento, por favoro. I'm going to take a short nap. I want you to wake me in 20 minutes, but you must hold on to my figs with both hands the whole time I'm asleep. You understand?
You want me to hold on to your what?
My figs.
With both hands?
Yes. I will take a 20-minute nap.
20 minutes?
And then I will perform.
I think we done set it up, honey.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, Uncle Waldo sleeps, and Queen Aretha holds on to his delicatos the whole time, and then awakes him for another wild lovemaking session. We hear the moans and groans again.
Oh, baby. Oh, yes.
Whereupon Queen Aretha speaks.
Oh, Uncle Walter, that was fantastic, baby. Are you sure you could hold up for maybe a second time?
Well, yeah, second time, no problem. But I'm going to need another 20-minute nap.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
And I'll need you to hold on to my plums with both hands while I sleep.
I got the formula. All right, let me have those little things. All right.
Well, once again, Uncle Waldo takes a nap, while Queen Aretha holds on to his Reese's Nut Cups. And again, she awakens him for another love-making session. We hear the moans and groans. Whereupon Queen Aretha speaks.
Oh, Uncle Walter, that was fantastic. Yeah. Best I ever had in my life.
Me too, yeah.
Woo. And I know what your secret is.
Yeah?
Your secret is me holding on to your little raisins while you sleep. That's why you can do that so well.
Well, not exactly.
Huh?
You see...
Why do you want me holding on to your little duties while you sleep there?
Queen Aretha, I hate to tell you this, but there is no secret to my Promethean lovemaking ability. Well, it's just that the last time I porked the help...
Yeah?
She stole my wallet.
You've been listening to the Runaway Radio Rewind. Join us next week for more memories and goodness for the intelligentsia from the people who made the former KLOL what it was. Find us online at runawayradiorewind.com and be sure to grab your Runaway Radio gear. You can find the show on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Google Play. Show us your dog, and we'll see you next week on the Runaway Radio Rewind.